Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Law Fully Dead by Joanna Campbell Slan, narrated by Amy Mcfadden. Prologue. We called it our year of family therapy. To paraphrase a line from a song, bring in the shrinks. We should have asked for the family discount. We needed it. Thelma Detweiler, my husband's mother, needed help getting over the fact that she'd lost 2 babies 40 years ago. The birth of my son brought up those ugly memories and made her turn on me. And then there was Sheila, the mother of my late husband, George Lowenstein, and new bride of Police Chief Robbie Holmes. Sheila was seeing a counselor and doing her best to keep attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings so she could stay sober. In the midst of all that, we had a family counseling session because of the multiple times we've been shot at. The most recent time we'd ran for cover was during my wedding. That's when my older kids and I ducked into a shed and hid under a donkey. I also decided to see a therapist by myself because, as it happens, I've been targeted by creeps more than anyone in my immediate family. The irony is that my husband is a homicide detective. You'd think he'd be in someone's crosshairs, but instead, it's been me, and I'm a mom who runs a retail craft store. Weird, huh? Go figure. Here's a rough transcription of my session with the shrink. So, Kiki, I'm wondering about something you wrote on your intake form. I think there might have been some confusion. Could you tell me exactly how many times you've been shot at? 7 or 8? Those are recovered bullets only. That's not counting the times people have tried to beat me up. Beat you up? Yes. Could you be more explicit? Are we talking about domestic violence? No, gosh, no. Not toward me. Neither husband ever laid a finger on me. See, I've been married twice. Someone murdered my first husband, George Lowenstein. Then George's business associate kidnapped me and jammed a gun in my ribs. There's also the time a customer's husband tried to beat me up. Oh, and one customer tried to strangle me with her purse strap. Plus there was that man, the guy who tried to choke me because I found his wife's severed leg. Severed leg. Severed, as in amputated? Right. I found it in our dumpster, behind the store. Oh, and I forgot about the sniper. Sniper? Of course he wasn't shooting at me, but I didn't know that at the time. I was in a crowd when he opened up. We all had to run. We took shelter in my mother-in-law's car. That must have been exhilarating. It was. I'm not sure you can count the white supremacist group that threatened me. Threatening to murder you isn't the same as actually attempting to do it, is it? I don't think it is. Other people might, but not me. How did you get involved in a white supremacist group? I wasn't involved, not really. I pretended to be a journalist and infiltrated one of their meetings to see what they were planning. After I ratted them out, the county authorities confiscated all the hateful CDs they were going to hand out to high school kids. CDs with racist songs on them. I'm kind of proud of that. I bet you are. My, that sounds exciting. It was, but not nearly as exciting as when I was run off the road. Did I tell you about that? I don't believe so. Twice. Once in my car while I was driving over one of those little narrow bridges in Ladue, and the water level was high. If I'd gone over the side, I would have drowned. Then there was the time when I was on my bike. Now that was scary. This black SUV turned left into me and sent me down an embankment. The one that dips into Highway 40, where all the traffic is. I thought for sure I was a goner. I had to flip the bike to one side and slide down the hill to stop myself from barreling into the oncoming traffic. Let me tell you, those rocks on bare skin hurt like crazy. My bike was really messed up, too. Well, it looks to me Kiki, like you have an unerring ability to tick people off. Excuse me? I want to change the subject. Let's get a little family history. Tell me about your parents. Was it a happy marriage? Gosh, no. Never. I mean, I don't understand why they got married, because they clearly did not like each other. My father was an alcoholic. He was abusive. He threw my younger sister out of the house when she was a teenager and pregnant. He's dead now, thank goodness. My mother is alive. She's a narcissist and an alcoholic. She's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. How about your support network? My best friend Clancy is OCD, but she's wonderful. A little prickly sometimes, but wonderful. My old best friend dumped me and blames me because her brother was shot at. Our nanny was born intersex and has since changed the gender assigned to him at birth. All things considered, my support network is pretty good, actually. You mentioned alcoholism runs in your family. Do you have any addictions? Yes. I hoard craft supplies. Smothered laughter. Show me a crafter who doesn't. Thank goodness they do, or I'd be out of a job. But seriously, I've really gone overboard on supplies lately. I'm not sure whether crafting is my solution or my problem. Considering all that's going on in your life, I definitely say that it's keeping you sane. Take that to the bank, Kiki. 1. The customers who visit my shop, Time in a Bottle, come in all shapes, sizes, talent levels, and personalities. Some of them get along well with one another, some of them not so much. I've seen friendships blossom, wither, die, and be reborn. There's a seasonality to relationships. At times, one person is the right friend, and when life changes, as it inevitably does, another person is a better fit. So, although I observed the coolness between Vanessa Minsky and Lydia Powers on that soggy Saturday evening in April, I wasn't overly concerned. Instead, I crossed my fingers and hoped things would sort themselves out. Typically, the women arrived together. This evening, they must have driven separately because Lydia showed up almost a half an hour before her friend. That alone signaled trouble. I noticed the change in their habits. I paid attention because it was my job to maintain a professional atmosphere inside Time in a Bottle, my retail business, and the St. Louis area's premier craft store, no matter how our guests acted. As the hostess with the mostess, I welcomed each woman as she got seated and took out her supplies. Because there were only 2 empty chairs left at the tables, the 2 friends were forced to sit next to each other. However, their body language signaled a strain between them. Instead of inclining their heads toward each other, they angled their chairs so that their backs faced each other. Instead of chattering happily, they were both quiet. Whereas they typically shared space on the work table, on this particular evening, there was an invisible fence between them, and neither would reach through or around it. Lydia had a hard look on her face as she fiddled with her rolling cart. From it, she withdrew scissors, a glue stick, ruler, craft knife, ink pens, pencils, erasers, and a bag of assorted ribbons and brads. All were neatly arranged in plastic bags and labeled. Vanessa made no move to take out her things. Instead, she sat hunched over her craft mat, seemingly lost in thought and staring at the handout I'd created. They weren't quarreling, at least not openly, but I made a mental note to keep an eye on them. If the level of discord grew worse, I might be forced to intervene to keep the peace. "We've got a couple of people with a doozy of an attitude problem," said my friend and coworker, Clancy Whitehead, as she stepped close enough for me to smell her Chanel perfume. Clancy could double as Jackie Kennedy because she has a dark auburn bob, wide-set eyes, a ladylike demeanor, and dresses in classics. Leaning in, my friend whispered, "Better drag out the nasty mat." The nasty mat was Clancy's invention. One day she brought in an old moss-green bath mat and announced, "From now on, if you're in a bad mood or you want to complain, you have to drag out the nasty mat and stand on it while you fuss. The nasty mat keeps cooties and bad vibes in one spot rather than letting them float around in the air where they can infect other people." At the time, I'd laughed at the silly idea, but it caught on. Once or twice a week, someone would drag out the mat and spew complaints. The entire process was so ridiculous that the rotten mood always ended very quickly. "Check out the two seated at 4 o'clock, whispered Clancy, using an imaginary clock face to direct my attention. I murmured, "Uh-huh, got it. Vanessa and Lydia. Bingo." Vanessa reminded me of Darth Vader. She dressed all in black, trimmed with leather, and cut in severe lines. Sophisticated, with a touch of edginess. Lydia was like a Talbot's catalog, classic and safe. Vanessa's dark hair was expensively colored, pulled into a low ponytail, and secured with a black velvet scrunchie. Lydia's hair was short and blonde, and I suspected she colored it at home. Vanessa favored elegant pants and turtlenecks. Lydia chose the same, but hers never looked as sleek. Even their faces covered opposing ends of the spectrum. Vanessa had a hawk-like nose and sharp, dark eyes that shone with intensity. Lydia's broad forehead and wide-set eyes suggested she was guileless, although I suspected nothing could be further from the truth. Lydia was tiny and thin, but not in an attractive way. Instead, she was scrawny. Her friend Vanessa was a big woman, almost 6 feet tall, and solid because she loved working out. Together, they were an odd couple, for sure. My goal is for our customers to leave their problems behind when they walk through the door. Time in a Bottle is a sacred place, a spot for releasing creative energy and finding the joy that accompanies the act of creation. Tonight, however, Vanessa and Lydia must have missed the memo. "Welcome, everybody." I opened the class by ringing a little brass bell and delivering my usual spiel about creativity being the art of making mistakes and having fun. I segued to, "Let's get out your supplies." Each of my customers had been asked to bring a plastic zipper bag with greeting cards, photos, and other ephemera in it. Ephemerae, the plural of ephemera, are, as the name implies, paper products designed to be used fleetingly. That might include, but is not limited to, tickets, brochures, note cards, lists, ticket stubs, receipts, and on and on. Taken as a group, these items provide a fascinating commentary on our daily lives. The philosophy behind a junk journal is simple. Your trash is a record of your life at any point in time. It's a paper trail, if you will excuse the pun. By collecting ephemera and saving it, you can preserve a unique look at your life, your times, and the world you inhabit. Of course, these scraps of paper don't record our moods. Maybe that's a good thing, too. I paused for the chuckles that inevitably came. So, it's up to us to add context. What I love best about junk journaling is that it allows us to recycle while also saving memories. I had everyone's attention. Reaching down, I held up an empty pizza box, one of many I use as a storage container. A few of our new customers gasped. Thoughts of sloppy cheese splotches and stains of tomato sauce must have pranced through their heads. "Don't worry," I hurriedly explained. "I buy these empty, clean boxes for us to use to protect our work. The real treat is inside." I withdrew 3 junk journals that I'd created as samples. "I'm passing these around so you can see what I've done. Your results should vary. We'll start by creating a shell for your journals. Does everyone have an old cereal box? If not, let Clancy know, and she'll supply you with one." With that, I instructed the group to cut the cardstock box into 2 large rectangles. Then they used sandpaper to rough up the printed surface as preparation for gluing on scrapbook paper. Next, my students used a 3-hole paper punch on both front and back covers. Metal rings would be slipped through the holes. This turned their final projects into loose-leaf books. With all of that in mind, and with all the steps explained in their handouts, our guests got down to work. All except for Vanessa and Lydia, who sort of sat there with grumpy expressions on their faces. "Why even bother to come?" Clancy asked me quietly, "if you're going to act like someone peed in your Cheerios." I smothered a laugh at her unexpected remark. Clancy is rarely crude. Typically, she is the most civilized person in the world, especially when she's dealing with the public. In private, she can be as snarky as the rest of us, but publicly, she's a paragon of rectitude. I guess they signed up in advance and didn't realize they'd both be in bad moods. I assume they came here rather than stay home on a Saturday night because they figured that crafting would cheer them up. That's usually what happens. But I picked a bad night to forget to bring my magic pixie dust, didn't I? "At least they seem to be getting along with other people," Clancy observed. Vanessa and Lydia had taken the 2 vacant seats between Bonnie Gossage and Maggie Earhart, seasoned crafters who weren't about to have their evening ruined by the down-in-the-dumps duo. Both Bonnie and Maggie are always in good moods, and golly, on this particular night, I really appreciated that. Most of the attendees were having fun, and that was infectious. As time went by, Lydia and Vanessa loosened up too. I took this as a compliment because I had worked hard to construct a junk journal class that combined cutting-edge trends with old skills, fun techniques, and altered products. All of the students but Vanessa were absorbed in their work. Although I guess you could say that she was engrossed too, after a fashion. Certainly she was putting a lot of effort into her project. With an astonishing amount of vigor, Vanessa scrubbed at her junk journal page with a glue stick. She pressed the glue hard against the paper, forcing globs of goo to transfer to the surface. Since I've never witnessed the massacre of a glue stick, I watched in shock while my customer worked up a sweat. "Vanessa?" I stared down at the implement formerly known as a glue stick. It was now a sticky glob in her right hand. That, glue stick?" "Yes?" Vanessa rotated in her chair to face me. Her painted-on eyebrows formed a pair of unusually pointed accent marks over her eyes. She'd extended her black eyeliner, adding wings at the edges of her lids. Her lipstick was an outrageous shade of bloody red. Looking past her, I read the headline on the card she held in one hand. "There are 2 sides to every divorce, yours and the jerk's." My mouth fell open, a singularly unattractive habit that I've been trying to break. I didn't know what to say. A blur of thoughts raced through my mind. Oh, I stuttered. I bit my lower lip. Was she holding the card because she owned it, or because she planned to send it, or what? I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to make a mistake. In a voice pitched loud enough to carry, Vanessa said, "Adam and I are getting a divorce. That's what you're wondering, isn't it?" I spoke quietly. "I was wondering why you aren't using glue dots or double-stick tape to secure the card." Actually, I wasn't sure if she wanted to share her news, and I didn't want anyone to overhear and think I was chastising my guest. "I didn't use the other adhesives because I reached into my bag and came up with the glue stick. I've had a chokehold on it ever since." Vanessa set the destroyed glue stick next to her project and practically dared me to say more. "Oh!" I managed a weak smile. "Okay, just wondering." Staring at the greeting card, I swallowed and searched for the right words. A divorce is the end of a dream, and it's never a cause for celebration. However, The wrong comment from me could tip Vanessa into a full-fledged pity party, and that would definitely put a damper on the evening's festivities. I wasn't sure what to do. Vanessa had shared her news loudly. People had flinched when they heard the word divorce. I wouldn't have wanted to broadcast my personal life to a craft class, but hey, that's me. Vanessa lifted one shoulder and let it drop. I'm having a bad day, Kiki. Really? A bad week. My husband wants a divorce. My best friend is missing in action. With that, she shot a rueful glance at Lydia's back. Lydia stiffened, and my breath caught in my throat. I worried that she'd turn around and the two of them would go after each other. That could get really ugly. Lydia's rigid posture was the only sign she had heard Vanessa's comment. Blessedly, Lydia didn't rise to her friend's challenge about being missing in action. All eyes had turned to stare at us, thanks to Vanessa's very public display of emotion. At the other end of the work table, I noticed that Clancy's eyes were large as silver dollars. She, too, was expecting the fur to fly. For what seemed like a terribly long time, no one spoke. Finally, Vanessa said, Sorry, Kiki. As you might imagine, I'm a little upset. I can't believe that Adam is dumping me for a younger woman whom he met at our gym. He's fallen for a gym bunny. Isn't that hilarious? After I carried and gave birth to his two precious boys, and my boobs and belly sag, he moves on to find Miss Taut and Tight. Makes me sick. I lightly patted her shoulder. I can imagine that it does. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know. I started to walk away, but she caught me by the wrist. Actually, could you shoot him? Like you did that creep at the slough? My face warmed as the blood rushed to my cheeks. This was so embarrassing. Every time somebody brought up the fact I'd killed a man, an uncomfortable mix of guilt and shame flooded through me. Self-defense, I hurried to say. If you hadn't shot him, that creep would have killed your mother-in-law, your friend's brother, and you. So you shot him in self-defense. We all heard about it on the news. Vanessa waved a dismissive hand. A large diamond took pride of place on her ring finger. A lot obviously had gone wrong, but in the beginning, Adam must have doted on his bride. A gold wedding band glinted alongside the engagement ring. Funny how inanimate symbols of love can outlast the real thing. That doesn't seem right to me. I had a choice to make, I said briskly, hoping to head the subject off at the pass. I wouldn't recommend shooting anyone, Vanessa. I'll have to live with what I did every day of my life. You might joke and say you wish I'd shoot your husband, but you don't really mean that. Killing Adam won't solve your problem. Not really. By now, all the women in the store had perked up their ears. They stared at me with curious expressions. I couldn't blame them. I'd been in a horrible situation, and I'd used a gun to defend myself. I had taken a life and saved lives, and I still had nightmares about the shootout at the slough. Every time I thought that gruesome situation was behind me, somebody brought it up. Like now. Suddenly, I didn't feel so sorry for Vanessa. Yeah, she was getting a divorce. Boo-hoo. Why'd she have to drag my past into it? I wanted to run into the back room and hide, but I couldn't. I had a job to do. So I decided to change the subject. Hey, everyone! Show me how your work is coming, please. My students lifted the junk journals they were assembling. After I'd snapped photos of their creations, I divided the ladies into 4 groups so they could share supplies while working on other portions of the project. Clancy walked around the room. When she got to where I was standing and helping Maggie with a stuck paper punch, Clancy hesitated. After I'd smacked the punch against the table and freed it to work again, Clancy took me by the elbow. She led me over to the food table where we could talk without fear that the others would overhear. "You okay?" she asked. Her dark eyes searched my face. I exhaled. I'd been holding my breath and didn't realize it. I guess. Pretty crummy of her. Clancy patted my shoulder awkwardly. She's not much for physical affection, but she keeps trying to be more touchy-feely. I appreciate the effort. Yeah, good grief. Here I was worried about her, and Vanessa managed to flip the situation around so I was the target. I wonder how many customers we'll lose because of her big mouth. I reached for a cupcake and deftly peeled away the wrapper before taking a bite. You won't lose any customers, Clancy chided me. If anything, people are intrigued by your sordid past. I couldn't help but smile. Clancy Whitehead, I would have never seen that as a good thing. I'm so glad you're my friend. To my surprise, she gave me a quick hug. Ditto. 2. How about all of you who are making pockets? How's it going? Last week I'd run through a list of possible ways to make pockets, as well as possible things to convert into pockets. I'd pointed out that used envelopes could find new life in junk journals. So could the fabric pockets removed from clothes, jeans especially. My crafters were creating a variety of pockets, intricate and plain. One woman had woven hers of craft paper from used paper grocery bags. Another had attached one of those sheer organza drawstring bags that are ubiquitous. Still another had carefully folded a foreign newspaper into a bag and used brads to attach it to the background of cardstock. Fabulous! I'm loving all of these great ideas! All right, tanglers, what have you been working on? Tanglers are folks who practice Zentangle, an easy-to-learn art form. 10 more guests held up Zia projects, Zentangle-inspired art. Once again, I was tickled by the creativity my friends displayed. Journalers, I'll come around and talk with you individually in case you have questions. All righty then. Great stuff. Back to work. I clapped my hands to signal that they could turn their attention to their projects. Since Vanessa was in a foul mood, I figured I better check on Lydia. She was digging around in her purse when I made it to her chair. Like most mothers, she was carrying a handbag large enough to hold a small pony. Moms are like that. We are walking, talking supply cabinets. Snacks, pharmaceuticals, wipes, tissues, pens, notepads, coins, and credit cards. In that order of importance. Hey, Kiki, she said. How is Austin Powers' wife? I asked, feeling very pleased with myself for the joke I was making. Actually, I'm his mother. I've always wondered how your son got his name. Seriously? Her brows lifted in surprise. It's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? My only excuse is that I was drugged to the gills at the time, owing to anesthesia, and my husband is a practical joker who always loved the name Austin, so I agreed to name my son after a stupid movie. What can I say, except that the moment got away from me? In my experience, life often gets out of hand. You can say that again, she said with a grimace. But don't, okay? Once was enough. When I had my daughter, I knew her sex in advance, and I picked out her name in advance. It's Leanne. And when I went into labor, I told Marv to go get drunk with his buddy Adam Minsky. I'd see him when I was drug-free and capable of handling his hijinks. Her story tickled me. So you and the Minskys have known each other for years? Yeah. Lydia's tone of voice changed. A shade of resignation was added, like she'd come to accept an unpleasant truth. Adam was Marvin's best man at our wedding. That was before Vanessa came along. See, Adam and Marvin went to high school together in St. Peter's. Back then, St. Louis was the big city, and St. Peter's just a bump in the road. She sighed. Whenever Adam needs anything, Marv drops everything and runs to his side. On the other hand, as long as Adam is alive, Marv will always have a job. Adam will find something for Marv to do. No matter how many crazy schemes my husband gets himself into, Adam is always there to bail Marv out. Believe me, Adam has had to twist himself into a pretzel for Marv more than once. I wasn't entirely sure what she meant by this disclosure, so I changed.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?